Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken?
Hey, Kiernan.
Hello, Ryan. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's a little chilly here in New York. How are things up there in Boston?
I'm tired, Ryan. I'm tired.
Why are you tired?
It's because I'm happy to announce that I've got a second child here with me, a newborn, a girl. Catherine and I had a girl named Penelope Jane Schmidt has joined the family. So we have a new traveler.
Hey, Penny. Welcome to the
Penny,
world.
Yeah, people have been asking, what is she going to go by? Penelope, by Penny? I think we're still figuring it out, but I like all the versions. I was thinking maybe Pigpen. I think that's cute.
Yeah, that probably, if she's called that in second grade, you're going to hear about it.
How about Nell? Somebody suggested Nell. I kind of like that. That's cute.
Pennies do Nell? I guess they could. I see it.
Pennies do Nell. It's right there in the middle of the name.
It's nice to have a name with so many options.
Totally. That's what's beautiful about these multisyllabic names. So Penelope, and actually, just to tease, my last stop is going to be related to the new child entering the family and what that means for our travel.
I bet it means a wonderful opening of your travel experiences.
Well, it definitely means that I no longer have a back seat because you have to put these giant car seats in. But
have you noticed how much bigger car seats have gotten since we were kids? They were these little flimsy plastic things that, barely took up any room.
It was like put them in a paper bag and just crimp the sides of the paper bag so there's a little pillow on the side.
Yeah, now they're like SUVs in themselves.
Now, Ryan, there is a bit of a story before we get into the meat of the episode, which, by the way, is going to be really interesting, and they are tied together, but there's a story I want to talk about. So the meat of the episode is going to be an interview that I had with a Bloomberg reporter all about China's new national parks. They're establishing 5 new national parks. They're huge. They have a great impact on the conservation goals and the climate change goals of China. And so we're going to learn all about these overseas national parks. But while we're talking about national parks, it of course makes me think of my personal hero. I know you're a fan. We call ourselves Ted heads, Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah, we love Teddy.
We love Teddy. And of course, one of the great institutions that honors Teddy, his father was one of the founding members, is the American Museum of Natural History right there in New York City, Central Park West. Deeply important to me, to you. We actually did some work on it together, which ties into this story years ago when we used to be at the same agency. And the American Museum of Natural History is even where I proposed to my wife.
Right underneath the big whale?
No, not underneath the big whale. That was a consideration, and I do like the idea of that. But I went for the Hall of North American Mammals because we're North American mammals. So it only really made sense. So we had a bison to one side, a moose to the other side, and then there was an Alaskan brown bear in the background. So that just feels like a real Theodore Roosevelt engagement area.
And did you consider proposing right in front of the Teddy Roosevelt statue in the front of the in front of the museum?
Ryan, I didn't. And I'll tell you.
That's probably for the best.
It is for the best. And it's because you and I have long been critical of the statue that is out front. Anybody who's passed, even if you haven't visited inside the American Museum of Natural History, you've surely seen on Central Park West this towering equestrian statue that has been extremely controversial and for very good reason. And it shows Theodore Roosevelt atop a horse looking very fit and manly. And below him are a depiction of an African man and a Native American. And I say clearly that the African man and the Native American man are put below Theodore Roosevelt because that really is the reason why this statue is so offensive, because there's clearly a colonial racist flavor to it. And it has been it's been of discussion for many years of New York City. Is this really a fitting tribute to Theodore Roosevelt? Is this really how the museum wants to represent itself? And is it triggering to people who are passing by it? And The museum has for many years been trying to launch a conversation around the statue. They had a display inside that I saw that kind of takes apart the different parts of the statue and puts questions out for debate. But I am very pleased to say, Ryan, that the statue has actually finally been removed.
This was really a long time coming, as we've been having these conversations around various statues across the country. This, to me, especially in New York City, was the prime offender for years and years. So I'm so glad that they have, made this decision to remove the statue.
Absolutely. I think that I do think it distracts from Theodore Roosevelt's legacy. I also think it's just very it's obviously offensive in the way that it's depicting non-white populations. I also think it has nothing to do with the museum. And I think the museum does a lot of great and important educational work. I think it is a wonderful institution. And so it's time to wipe the slate clean. They're going to renovate the front plaza, and the museum, the statue itself, the removal process, it cost $2 million to remove the thing. And it was decided finally by the New York Public Design Commission last year that it needed to be moved.
Is that just because it's so heavy? I mean, we could have just gotten a group of protesters to do it for free.
Absolutely. Or just
throw it in the East River,
Now, one thing that I think is kind of interesting is it's not being destroyed. And I have to say that I was originally hoping that it would be destroyed. I thought that would be the right thing to do. The city is actually putting it on loan to the future Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library that's being built in Medora, North Dakota. And the library is meant to be built in 2026. And my first reaction was, oh, God, it's going to be like a super conservative library, and they're going to put this out front at like a, proud Theodore Roosevelt statue. But I am pleased to say I went to the library's website, and they put out a press release about taking on this statue. And they begin by saying the board of the Theodore Roosevelt Library believes the equestrian statue is problematic in its position. Moreover, its current location denies passerby consent and context. And it goes on to say that museums are supposed to do hard things. And it is said those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So those are quotes directly from the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library Foundation. And what they plan to do is try to educate people as to why this is an offensive statue. And, if put to that use and done well, I hope that it can be successful.
Yeah, and it's news to me that this presidential library is opening, so that's a cool thing.
Well, you and I have long dreamed of going to Theodore Roosevelt National Park in North Dakota. Maybe we could combine the two if we don't get to it before 2026.
I like that idea. I think that's perfect.
And, for those who do want to still learn about Theodore Roosevelt and his ties to the American Museum of Natural History and conservation movement, I am happy to say there is still plenty of information and celebration about Theodore Roosevelt at the American Museum of Natural History. The first is go inside to the entrance hall. They have these beautiful murals that show Theodore Roosevelt in lots of different situations in his life out in nature, and it gives you a real sense for the history of his exploration and love of nature. But most importantly, Ryan, you'll remember this. Back in the early 2010s, maybe 2012, 2013, you and I worked on a campaign to unveil a new statue of Theodore Roosevelt that is down in a lobby directly below that main lobby, which is called the Theodore Roosevelt Memorial Hall.
And this is a lovely statue of Teddy Roosevelt. It's seated. He's happy. You can sit right next to him as if you're sitting there, having a conversation about all the stuff you've seen in the museum that day.
That's right. He doesn't seem superhuman. There's no political context beyond. The depiction of him is actually taken from a photograph of a famous camping trip he took with the naturalist John Muir in 1903. And folks, when you see it, you'll remember it. He's got a bandana around his neck, and he's kind of in wilderness gear. I will say, I think they slimmed him down a little bit for the bench. But you can take a picture right next to him, and that's part of the joy. You get to actually interact with the teddy. And then there are 4 displays around the hall that talk about TR falling in love with nature as a child, when he moved out to North Dakota and became a rancher, when he became a president who was fighting for conservation and trying to educate people about the importance of nature, and then post-presidency when he went out and really explored the world. This is a true engagement with the history and legacy of Theodore Roosevelt.
Yes, I think this is I think this is much better for the museum, for Roosevelt's legacy, for everyone involved, to have this be the representation of Teddy that folks get to see and experience.
And if you want to follow in Kiernan P. Schmidt's footsteps, I've already taken the Hall of North American Mammals for an engagement site, but I would say it would be perfectly wonderful to get engaged right in front of the Theodore Roosevelt statue we're talking about.
And you could get that Teddy Roosevelt impersonator that we had come to the opening event to actually to be there.
I mean, hell, engaged. You could consummate the marriage. With Theodore Roosevelt, it's obviously going to get you hot and heavy.
And I'm almost sure that
at least it does us, right, Ryan?
Yes, and I'm almost sure that there's a picture of you and I and Teddy together. That
absolutely, let's throw it on the Instagram.
We will make that happen.
Absolutely. So and the Instagram, if you want to go see it, is at OOO Podcast, which is at Podcast, like out of office. And Ryan, I think it's fitting now, having talked about some of the conservation issues and national landmarks in the U.S., for us to turn to my conversation with Bloomberg journalist Karoline Kan, all about China's new national parks.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this. One of them is the size of Florida, I found out. So, I hope it's a little different than Florida. Let's take off.
Tell the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
Today, I'm joined by Karoline Kan of Bloomberg, who co-authored a fascinating article in December entitled, "China is Building the World's Largest National Park System." And on the podcast, we talk a lot about the national parks here in the United States. And my co-host Ryan and I are always looking for national parks when we travel overseas. So this really caught my eye. And I realized I knew basically nothing about China's national park system or conservation work. So Karoline, thank you so much for joining us on Out of Office.
Thank you so much for having me to your podcast.
So let's start off with just what is the news here? Is this China's first establishment of a national park system?
Yeah. So in China for a long time, of course, China used to have all kinds of the park system that were designed to protect the country's the environment, the ecology, and to build more parks. But it is the first time China officially established the system of national park. In October, Chinese President Xi Jinping announced the formal establishment of a network of 5 national parks in the first batch, and there will be more to be gradually approved. So once the system is fully established, China is going to have the world's largest national park system that covers a total size of that would a huge amount of land will be covered as a national park. And for the first 5 national parks, they already cover a total size of over 200,000 square kilometers, which is over 80,000 square miles of the country's land.
Yeah, and just to put that in context, a single one of the new 5 parks is larger than the state of Florida in the United States. So for our American listeners, that gives a sense of the scale. When we think of Florida, there's a national park there called the Everglades that protects this just one piece of wetland. And when you think of that, the conservation limit then encompassing the entire state, that gives a sense of China's ambitions here. And so is this basically taking a patchwork of conservation lands that already exist, or is it actually creating new conservation lands in these new 5 national parks?
I think a lot of details will be, gradually reviewed, and I think in the process there will be a lot of decisions to be made. But right now, I think, for example, let's take the one of the 5 national parks called the Giant Pine National Park, for example. This is a park that connects several preserved, protected land and parks that already exist, and the new efforts is to bring them all into the system, and from now on, that will be protected by the central government level. But in the past, all those small areas were protected by provinces, by cities, and by different departments. That means in the process there will be a lot of loopholes. So the new system is designed to try to help to fill those loopholes and to protect them by the standard, same level standards, and that hopefully will be more efficient and effective.
Yeah, that reminds me of how certain national parks have been established in the United States, where you have protected lands. Some start as state parks or U.S. national forests, and then over time they come under the National Park Service, and as you say, become part of that broader system of rules that are consistent, and also become shared under that national park workforce. I'm curious, for these new 5 national parks, what are the plants or animals that are most of concern for the conservation work? Are they one of the major motivating factors?
So far, a lot of the animals that on the in those first batch of national parks are the quite famous ones, such as the giant pine and the Asian tiger, and a lot of the animals. You probably will see them a lot on the news, on TV, and they are really the stars, the celebrity of the animal kingdom, in the world, in China. So that is actually one of the criticism that the national park system has been receiving. That is is our protecting those animals that probably already recognize, have a lot of recognized in the country, and already enjoy so much resources protection. And if you look at, for example, the giant pine, which is the best known in the world, if you look at the budget that is used to protect this one species, and if you look at the budget that is used to protect many different animals and plants and all kinds of works, and that is the gap is so big that what actually are the real difficulties in the country's conservation work. That is some enjoy too much and some don't have the basic maybe.
Right. An overemphasis on the sexy animals, the charismatic animals. I do think the panda, to those in the West, is kind of the most iconic. And so part of the new park is it does cover panda habitat. Is that right?
Yeah. So that has been in the news a lot, and probably the most, that if you read anything about the new national park system, you will read a lot about the giant pine, and which to some people why this is new, because everyone probably think, giant pine is already so well protected, and why this is new. But I mean, like a lot of experts actually argue that there are some advantages of protecting those, the stars, the celebrities species, because they are called the, kind of like umbrella species, because once they are protected, the idea is their habitat are protected well. That means the habitats are also providing the, the basic and need for other animals and plants. And that means because such as like panda, they naturally attract attention. They naturally so easily to gain the national resources. That means like in the name of protecting them, you can also protect other animals. So that's the idea.
And I'm curious, with the establishment of new protected lands or parks, oftentimes that means either dealing with communities that fall within the boundaries of those parks or industry that's already active in the area. So will there be effects on any communities or business through these new 5 national parks in China?
I think a lot, like a traditional way, a long used way is once China circle up this area and to announce that this is protected, most of the people living in that region will be moved out in the name of like protecting this region. In a lot of cases, it makes sense because a lot of this like biodiversity, diversified regions, they are also one of the poorest region in China. So a lot of people, they rely on, like living in the mountains, and they don't have access to a lot of like modern life basic requirements. So that means they have to, for a long time, they have to rely on the mountain. They have to cut the trees. They have to live a kind of life that probably is not good for the local biodiversity. But I think the new ideas that have been proposed by China's experts, China's conservation expert, is that once we establish the national park, it's also important to keep the people living in this region, to keep them there, because they know better than probably anyone else out of the region of how to live like with this system, how to live with the local landscape, local ecosystem. So if they are encouraged and educated to protect this their homeland, the region, probably it will really like achieve a very good effect of the overall protection system. But I think it takes time, and I think in some regions we already see the like tens of thousands or even millions of people moving out of the region, because at the same time China is also having this like national project of like lifting impoverished population out of the poverty, and that is one of Xi Jinping's like most important projects of actually of the last 10 years, and also like I think it will be continued. That it's very important for China to officially announce that there isn't poor population anymore in this country, and one of the approaches is to like relocate them to the cities or nearby towns.
And is there any plan to employ some of the locals in the new parks?
Actually, yes. So in October, I visited a part of this newly established Giant Panda National Park, and I met several like forest rangers who work in this park, who are actually from the villages nearby, and I think they are very proud. I talked to a guy who was born in this village and grew up there, and who. When he was young, he also, like many people in China's villages, they work as migrant workers to the cities, but they don't feel a sense of belonging to the cities. And now the new system provide them a chance to work in the park to protect the animals and plants that they have been so proud of, they're so familiar with. And now, like this, their hometown is announced to be the part of the national park, and they're very, very happy. I think that could be a very sustainable system if there will be more positions created for people living there and who love to, be a part of this project.
And approximately how many people are employed across the national park system?
The national park system, because I think there will be a lot to see in the coming decade. But the old park system that include parks belonging to different levels of government, there are like I think the figure I found is 1.7 million, over 1.7 million people.
Right. And that's, to put that in context, the U.S. National Park System has about 22,000 employees. So it's many, many times the amount of people. But of course, you're talking about a huge amount of space to protect in China. And so
I think a lot of them are not like in the U.S. who are full-time. So in China, there are a lot of people work part-time and the job is not very stable.
One thing I'm wondering, and this isn't in the article, but in the U.S., have you by chance visited any of the U.S. national parks? No,
unfortunately not yet. But I really hope one day.
Yes, absolutely. You got to get out there. And when you do, please email me. I'll give you recommendations. And the national park rangers in the United States, no matter what park you go to, have an iconic uniform and color scheme, these crisp green pants and a tan shirt and a big brimmed hat. I'm just wondering, in this new national park system, do you see consistency in the way there's their dress or their logos that look the same across the parks?
No, not really, but probably like this because it's really new and I haven't visited most of them. It sounds like a great system, like in the way of publicity education, but I'm not sure if that's the purpose.
And how about, there's a distinction in the United States system where the national parks are protected lands, and then lands that are run, for example, under the U.S. Forest Service are managed. So there's logging allowed, mining allowed, certain industries are allowed to work in a sustainable way that's overseen by the government. Do you know whether industry will be allowed to happen in any of these parks, or are they purely protected lands?
I'm not so sure, but I think it will be in the past, in the old protection system in China. It's so once this region is announced to be protected, it's purely protected and not any industrial or this kind of activities are not allowed. But in reality, so that is just on the paper. So in reality, it's really hard.
All right. Well, Karoline Kan, thank you so much for joining us on Out of Office. And now it's time for the last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right, Ryan, we're here in the last stop. What'd you think? Are you excited to go to China's national parks?
I mean, I don't think I've ever even seen a panda in real life. I'm trying to think.
Really? Not even at a zoo?
I don't know. I mean, you don't see them in zoos that often. They're pretty, epic animals, right?
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I have to admit, I found it odd that it's controversial that they should be saving the habitats. I guess it's because it's all the charismatic animals,
Yeah. No, I mean, the beautiful animals always get the best press coverage. So
I mean, you and I certainly know that. Ryan, if you could found a national park to protect one creature that you find to be particularly notable or charismatic, I'm curious who you would choose.
I love lions.
Yeah, that's I think they're doing fine. I think people.
I just saw some great animal photography of this like elder lion and it's very regal. Like
yes.
Yeah.
Well, and then some would even call it the king of the jungle, right?
I've heard. I've heard of that. Yeah.
I think we coined that right here.
I think we wrote a whole musical about it.
I think I would choose a tapir. Do you know the tapir?
No, what's a tapir?
Nothing. What's a tapir with you? The tapir is a medium-sized mammal, 4 legs, and sort of a snoot. It almost looks like if a elephant's trunk were shrunk down to like a 20th of its size. Anyway, do a little Googling.
Oh, it's cute.
They're super cute. Super cute. Yeah, so let's get a tapir protection zone going.
Yeah, I mean, it's cute in like a weird sort of way, though.
Which is exactly why it's
not a panda.
No, it's not a panda. It's not obvious, in its cuteness. That's why I like moose.
It's an acquired
too.
taste.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like moose. I love their spindly legs. Well, Ryan, before we go too far down spindly moose legs, I do want to remember to say thank you to Karoline Kan for joining us here on the podcast. But we are now here in the last stop. This is the last segment of the show, the final segment of the show. It's my favorite segment. It's your favorite segment. It's popularly known as the people segment. And that's because it's a moment of meditation, of sharing, of communion, where you, Ryan, and I, Kiernan, each bring one thing each week. It could be anything. It could be a tale, a tall tale. It could be a memory. It could be a dream. It could be a piece of gear. It could be a recent purchase. It could be a bit of gossip. It could be an Instagram post. It could be an article that you read in the New Yorker or the Atlantic, or maybe a local newspaper. You got to be supporting local newspapers. It can be anything as long as it fulfills this one obligation. It has to inspire the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. And with COVID, it sure is workaday. Am I right, Ryan? So I have to ask you, as I ask you every episode, did you bring a last stop this week?
I did, Kiernan. As any listener here knows, I am a huge fan of immersive theater. It combines all the things I like about theater with all the things I like about being immersed. During COVID, immersive theater has been slow to return, because unlike, traditional proscenium theater, it's not, you don't just sit there with a mask on and look at the stage. You're walking around, interacting with characters, etc. So it's been, slow for those productions to get up. But there's a big smash production of a new immersive experience called Bottom of the Ocean, which is a surrealist experience that examines all the different ways that ceremony and rituals sort of add meaning and pleasure to our lives. And
boy, Ryan, what does that mean? I don't know.
We'll see. But what's cool about it is there's only you go through as either a couple or a single through the experience. So it is as intimate as an experience as you can imagine. It's just you and your friend and the folks in the room who are acting. And it's been a big hit. It's very difficult to get tickets. It's playing until the end of April, but I imagine they will extend again because they keep selling out as they release these blocks of tickets. So really excited to be fully immersed in this, what will probably be a winter wonderland by the time tonight rolls around, into the bottom of the ocean.
Is this going to be a weird for the sake of weird kind of thing?
Probably. I mean, everything in Bushwick has a little bit of that, but this one seems a little more grounded. The super weird ones tend to fizzle out. So I think that the fact this has been around for a couple months and still selling tickets and the word of mouth is great, that maybe it's less weird for the sake of being weird, and maybe I'm truly going to learn something.
Well, bottom of the ocean, maybe you'll get to see the big blue whale way up above you.
Oh, I hope so. Do you have a last stop this week, Kiernan?
I do have a last stop this week, Ryan, and as I mentioned, it's tied into the recent birth of my daughter. I'm now saying my daughter, Penelope Jane Schmidt. And I'm currently on paternity leave, to facilitate the bonding. And
that's why we're recording this at all sorts of weird hours. You have a lot more free time.
Oh, man, yeah. Paternity leave. It's, I recommend it. And by the way, folks, just a side note, if you get paternity leave or maternity leave, take the full damn thing. It is your benefit. It's as much an important part of your compensation as your salary or your medical benefits. Please take your full maternity and paternity leave. So, I'm growing a little nostalgic for the fact that I'm thinking back to 2 years ago when I was on my initial paternity leave with Charlie. And one of my last tasks before COVID hit, and it's so ironic, is I took Charlie down to a passport office in Rhode Island in order to get him a passport, because Catherine and I had dreams of that summer taking him to Europe. And so I was recently kind of cleaning out some old documents and came upon his passport, which is very funny because he's literally 4 months old. And that's the passport picture of him.
Does he have it all? Does he have it all? A bunch of stamps on there already? He's already got it full.
Well, I mean, COVID hit. Hit right after. So no, it's actually zero. And Catherine reminded me, not only did we get him a passport, Ryan, we got him global entry.
You got him global entry?
Of course. We were planning on going around the world with this
How
kid.
can they successfully vet a kid for global entry? There's not even enough history to know, if they're a danger or not.
I think they just check the diaper and they go, yeah, he's clear. He's clear. So, it was a sad, I do think it's going to be one of these keepsakes that is going to remind him when he's older, kind of what he lived through. I mean, he's not going to remember COVID. In his baby book, I have written notes every few months kind of summarizing what's been going on with the pandemic and what a strange thing he's living through. And, he's going to have this passport, which, so he can use it for another 3 years, I think. So I do think we'll get some stamps in it, but it's a very interesting and odd sign of the times.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, it's really optimistic he won't remember COVID. I mean, this could be going on 4 years from now. So,
I mean, he's not going to remember the very serious quarantine lockdown.
Yeah.
By the time he's remembering in a year or two, I think it will be endemic.
Yeah, no, it'll be by but SARS 27 will be the real. That'll be the one.
People, I think people are waiting outside the store to see that sequel. SARS 27.
Yeah. Well, look, I am glad that he is, not one of the. Well, he is for now, but one of the 40% of Americans who haven't left the country. So it's good that Charlie's got his passport ready to go, so you can get him off of that list.
And global entry. So he'll be beating you.
Even I don't have global entry.
He'll be beating you out to the Uber line.
Yeah. Does he? He doesn't have the mobile passport express, though. So you can't have it all, Charlie.
Maybe that'll be for his birthday.
Well, until next time, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
The seat taken.
Does Lion King have a panda? Doesn't have a panda because no pandas there, I guess.
Kung Fu Panda does, I think.
Oh, yes.
I think.
Yes. God, I've never seen that.